Hello, everyone. This is the presentation of Group H on the topic of state-society relations in Kazakhstan. My name is Dana Itbenbet, and I'm going to tell about the background information about Kazakhstan. So the country is located in Central Asia, and Kazakhstan gained independence on December 16th in 1991. Nur Sultan is the capital city of the country, and Kazakh language is the official language of Kazakhstan, and the Russian language has the status of the language of inter-ethnic communication. Regarding the ethnic groups, the country is home to 130 ethnic groups. As can be seen from the slide, the ethnic groups are Kazakhs, Russian, Uzbeks, Ukrainians, Uyghurs, Tatars, Germans, and others. Regarding the economy, since independence in 1991, per capita GDP has increased 20-fold from $700 to 13,000 US. Speaking of political regime of the country, the Republic of Kazakhstan is a unitary state, and the system of government is presidential. Under the constitution, Kazakhstan is a democratic, secular, legal, and social state. The president of the Republic of Kazakhstan is the head of state, the highest political official who determines the main directions of the domestic and foreign policy of the country and represents Kazakhstan in the international arena. The government implements executive powers, heads the system of executive bodies, and exercises supervision of their activity. The Parliament of the Republic of Kazakhstan performs legislative functions and consists of two chambers acting on a permanent basis, the Senate and the Majlis.
In any government that values state-society relations, non-governmental organizations play an important role in serving the people and helping democracy work properly. According to the Bureau of National Statistics, as of April of 2020, the number of registered NGOs in Kazakhstan is 22,344. Among them, only 16,426, or about 73.5%, were found active. Looking at the statistics, we can tell that the majority of NGOs in Kazakhstan are service-based rather than expressive-based, meaning that their main focuses are providing services to the public in areas like healthcare, education, or culture. In fact, support for socially vulnerable categories of the population and physical culture and sport are placed second and third after the uncategorized others group. Only 2.13% of NGOs work for promoting the development of civil society, including increasing the effectiveness of NGOs. Furthermore, there are different types of NGOs in terms of their scale. There are international NGOs that function on a global level. One of the examples would be the Amnesty International organization, which focuses on human rights, especially rights for peaceful assembly and expression in Kazakhstan. At the same time, there are state NGOs that work on a national level. For example, the Civil Society Development Association, or ARGO, which is based in Almaty with the mission of building relationships with state structures for open communication and transparency. Finally, there are also NGOs that work on a local level with the same mission of developing the civil society and creating conversations between the people and city or region Akimat.
So I would like to continue about the rules of registration of non-governmental organizations in Kazakhstan. The most popular legal form of NGO is a public association, followed by that of a foundation. The government is considering a series of reforms to improve the legal framework, including the amendments to the constitution, the law on self-government, law on sponsorship and patronage, and the tax laws. There is no formal definition of NGO in Kazakh law. National legislation uses the term non-commercial organizations to include the organization with various legal forms such as institutions, public associations, joint stock companies, consumers cooperatives, foundations, religious associations, associations of legal entities in the form of association or union. from Article 6 of the law on non-commercial organizations as of January 16, 2001. Non-commercial organizations, and in particular public associations, cannot exist without state registration and without obtaining status as legal entity. However, unregistered associations that undertake activities with administrative and criminal liability under Article 375 of the Code on Administrative Offenses as of 30th January 2001 and Article 337 of the Criminal Code as of 16th July 1897, respectively. Effective 1st January 2006, the registration 2006, the registration fee for NGOs was reduced from 2,000 tenge or $169 to 7,600 tenge or $64. This change, along with the country's economic growth, has made the registration process significantly more affordable. A non-commercial organization can be established through creation, but also as a result of reorganization of an existing non-commercial organization. Public associations are established upon an initiative of at least 10 citizens convening a founder meeting at which they adopt a chapter and form organizational governing bodies. Article 19 of the law on non-commercial organizations. NGOs are exempt from paying taxes, and the regulation of tax privileges has improved gradually. Since the January of 2007, funds received under state contracts are exempt from corporate income tax and value-added tax. In addition, NGOs are providing services to specific social groups, such as disabled people, are exempt from paying income tax on their economic activities.
Now let me continue with NGO source of funding. Financial support for NGO social activities by the government is an important area of cooperation between the state and civil society in Kazakhstan. They have several potential sources of funding, including government agencies, international organizations, private businesses, other Kazakhstani NGOs, foreign companies like Concepat International, Soros Foundation, ICNL, and others. Low level of support from the government in the 1990s was one of the reasons Kazakhstani NGOs sought comprehensive aid, primarily from abroad. Yet many of the foreign donors decreased funding programs in recent years, and state social contracts are currently the most significant financial support for non-governmental organizations in Kazakhstan. Total funding for social contracts reached $38 million in 2017, even though the amount of funding is only increasing every year. Analysis of the law on NGOs in 2015 reveals the emergence of conflicts in the legal dimension and interpretation of the provisions of the document. It was assumed that the law would significantly facilitate the life of NGOs involved in realization of public services. In fact, the law reduced the activities of organizations to obtaining grants and participation of state social order. As a result, it called into question the independence and autonomy of NGOs. Now, considerable amount of government's budget is distributed through a relatively small number of organizations. They indeed can participate in state tenders, yet many of them complain that the process of issuing contracts is less than transparent and that they must make a deposit of 3% of the amount of the contract. Oftentimes, they just lack resources to do it, not to mention that the state only funds specific project activities, and all of the funds for NGOs from non-budget resources also managed by the government, leading to monopolization in distribution of grants and becoming the additional filter allowing to sift out unwanted public organizations and movements.
My name is Ian, and we will continue on the topic of protests. To begin with, what are the protests? Protest is a public expression of objection, disapproval, or dissent towards an idea or action, typically a political one. Also, it can be ecological, economical, or concerning discriminations. Protests can take many different forms, from individual statements to mass demonstration. Various forms of self-expression and protests are sometimes restricted by the governmental policy, such as the requirement for protest permits. Failing to obtain a permit may lead to charges of operating without a permit, though there can be taken some punishment for protesters and activists. In 2016, Kazakhstan held a series of protests in different cities against new land rules for agriculture. First, people in the city of Atyrau in western Kazakhstan took to the streets. Then demonstration occurred in Aktobe in the north and in the Semey in the East Kazakhstan. So the main cause was on 13th March 2016, Minister of National Economy announced that starting from 1st July, 1.7 million hectares of agricultural land would be put up for auction. Also, journalists said that the boiling point was not the amendment to the land count, but the country's typical economic situation due to the declining oil prices and the devaluation of the tenge. So we can see that their main goal was to ban the sale of land for foreigners and, of course, improve the living standards of Kazakhstani people. What measures were taken by the state during the rallies? First of all, access to social network, messaging apps, and YouTube was blocked in Kazakhstan. Also, websites of independent media outlets like Radio Azatlık or Raiskaya Nedelya, who covered the protests, were blocked. To talk about the punishment, there were more than 1,000 protesters were detained. More than 30 activists were arrested in Almaty. Though the arrests were based on the posts, reports, and comments made on the social media by activists criticizing the land code revision and expressing support for protest. On 5th May 2016, Nazarbayev announced a moratorium on some provision of the land count. So, in addition, instead of carrying out reforms that get into the root of the problem, the authorities have resorted to tighter control on the information space. Nazarbayev ordered the creation of the new Ministry of Information and Communication, which would monitor the information space and develop the state's information policy.
Okay, so in order to reduce the tensions caused by previous rallies and by human resentment in Kazakhstan, in June 2021, Askar Mamin, the prime minister, decides to introduce a decree increasing human rights protection, which consists of 9 points. The first point is about human trafficking, which increases the severity of punishment for human trafficking and legalizes the right of victims to live in Kazakhstan. It also provides them with some governmental support. The second point is about women discrimination, which makes all jobs equal and protects women more in case of domestic violence. The third point is about the disabled people, which allows them to participate in some discussions about building blocks. And the fourth point is about agreements with UN, which enhances the mechanism of approving some human rights decisions with United Nations, and also, also the human rights indicators are planned to match the indicators of sustainable development. The fifth point refers to expanding freedoms of unification, which makes the registration of religious united organizations easier and provides them with pleasant conditions. The sixth point is about freedom rights also, and about freedom of thought. It allows for more freedom of expressing civic opinions. The seventh point exacerbates the punishment for the crime of human torture and eliminates the ways in which such crimes may be gotten away with. And the eighth point introduces more financial support for small businesses. And the ninth point ensures that new houses are built within a walking distance from police stations. So to sum up, the 2021 decree increases human rights and allows for more civic freedoms. And it also strengthens the punishment for different types of crimes, expands women's rights, and altogether it makes the state-society relations better. So this decree, which was introduced, it enforces the state-society relations.
Hello everybody, today I'm going to talk about process Hostel the Call. In the previous year, after the Kemarov Astana announced its decision to start draining part of Lake Malachal the Call and build buildings on this site, activists formed the Hostel the Call initiative to mobilize society around the problem of water destruction for the sake of quick gain. Since August 2020, 150 activists, artists, and scientists has worked to preserve the reservoir by bridging digital media and in-person events. They frequently posted on Instagram and Facebook, updating followers on events, as well as Zoom discussions with scientists who have researched the reservoir's ecosystem. Hostel the Call has also tried to engage with the government officials directly, sending requests to the authorities, filling out petitions supporting the lake and fighting to preserve it. But these attempts were unsuccessful, as in the government's plan, these lakes are no longer on the maps and the lake's boundaries are shrinking daily. After activists had discovered that the city administration would go ahead with its construction plans at the reservoir, on September 7, they decided to enact a performance and two renowned contemporary artists, with the help of some of the long-time campaigners of the informal social decor organization, staged a symbolic performance Baksus Arena, standing with open arms across the path of the bulldozers called in by the construction company. Thank you, and I give the floor to Diana, who will talk about state response.
Although eco-activists reported a neglect response from state authorities, the Department of Environmental Protection and Nature Management of the city of Nur-Sultan reported that meetings with the population and eco-activists are held on regular basis, along with briefings and interviews in the media being organized. On the whole, state representatives' response was considered as ambiguous since, for instance, chairman of the Union of Builders of Kazakhstan, Talgat Yergaliyev, claims that the lake Small Taldykoy will eventually dry up unless it is not turned into artificial reservoir. He also added that the entire city of Nur-Sultan is built on small lakes, and he doesn't understand why eco-activists weren't protesting during that time. Then also the Akemet also agreed that there is need for dredging operations to purify water from harmful sediments and to maintain water balance. On the other hand, the Ministry of Ecology, Geology, and Natural Resources considers it expedient to preserve the groups of lakes in Small Taldykoy. Vice Minister Aliya Shalabekova also said that construction work and backfilling of the reservoir definitely will have a negative impact on the environment of the lake of Small Taldykoy and also on animals habiting there. Head of the Ministry of Ecology, Sergey Brekishev, reported that they hold a meeting with Akemet where eventually they come up to the common solution where they decided that Akemet will plan the development construction strategies accordingly with the specifics of the small lake of Taldykoy, which we believe eventually means that state authorities somehow took into consideration eco-activists and society's opinion.
Another protest is protest against group Feminita in Karaganda. So what is Feminita? The Kazakhstan feminist initiative Feminita is a grassroots queer feminist collective that aims to create and strengthen the rights of women and activist communities that contribute to the introduction of change in the social, political, economic, and cultural environment for the most oppressed groups of the population of Kazakhstan, which include lesbians, bisexuals, queers, and people with disabilities. On July 28 in 2021, in one of the city's business centers, the feminist organization Feminita held a meeting against which an indignant crowd staged an authorized rally. They demanded that the women stop the event and leave the building. The crowd at first pounded on the windows and doors with their fists, and then began to throw plastic bottles, accompanied by swearing, shouting, and whistling. Police officers came to help the women. Law enforcement officers tried to calm the crowd. The police created a leaf corridor and took the activists out of the building to a safe place. And Deputy Akim of the city of Karaganda, who was on the spot, said that in his opinion there were no hooligan actions, and the reaction of the authorities was correct. Also, he said that authorities had warned the organizers about the possible reaction of the people. Local residents who came to the event were brought to the police station and released. The Feminita activists were held for several hours and then sent by train to Almaty at night. The police said it was done for their safety.
What is the Feminita group's perspective? Is it discrimination by the society or by the government? Based on the previous slides, we see the discrimination by the society when some men started to protest against LGBTQ community and against Feminita group. But what about the government? According to the Feminita group's words, they claim that they kept information about the meeting, the event, confidential, and no one could know about the location and the time of the event. And there is a concern that confidential information was leaked and that the government tried to hinder the work of organization by influencing the heads of hotels who refused to conduct the meeting and the event, and by spreading the confidential information. And there is also concern about discrimination because the police arrested only the activists but not the protesters. We cannot say precisely about the state-society relations now, but let's move to talk further and to understand the nature of these relations. So we can only rely on facts without any bias. So the activists were arrested and then immediately sent to Almaty from Karaganda. But another side of the conflicts was not arrested. That means that male attackers were not detained for two reasons: for public order disturbance and for physical attacks on activists. And it leads to only one conclusion, that the government chooses the side of the opposition. It supports the particular group of people by suspending the punishment for a particular group. And that is the exact feature of discrimination. And we can conclude that state-society relations are biased and lack tolerance in an example of state and Feminita.
In addition to real-life protests and rallies, there is another form of activism in Kazakhstan, the internet activism, which is considered as one of the effective tools to demonstrate the public opinion. Scholars claim that the network communication has become more accessible due to the presence of internet, which makes it easier for people to find supporters and mobilize actions to influence the government and the policies it proposes. So to take more specific example of it in Kazakhstan, let's look at the petition that's been announced recently. The petition demanded the abolition of the vehicle recycling tax, which was signed by more than 150,000 people, judging by the meter of the site to date. Though this site is usually criticized because it fails to prove the correctness of the personal data field and real existence of people who signed it, which means that the signature doesn't have the legal force. This site is essential because it draws the attention of the public, the media, and the government itself on the problems which concern the Kazakhstani people. However, we need to acknowledge that Kazakhstan has a severe problem with censorship on internet in the name of national security, which limit the direct criticism of authorities and the government. And people who openly speak out against the government to a large audience usually are suppressed. For example, the creator of the satirical Instagram account KazNews24, Timirlan Mintsibek, was accused of disseminating dangerous fake information, while the only mission of his project was to ridicule the absurdity of some aspect of modern Kazakhstan, like the flaws in the law system, the judiciary system, and the political system of Kazakhstan.
Moving on, now I'll present about the reaction from the government to the protests. The first and evident reaction we see from the government is refusal for legal registration of groups. What I mean by this is that the Kazakh authorities are hindering the activities of unwanted groups by refusing them to register with the justice authorities. This argument is backed up by the case of the feminist initiative Feminita, which submitted documents to the Ministry of Justice 3 times and had been rejected at all times, receiving standard denials that cited some violations and inconsistencies in the charter paperwork. Although the Feminita organization has been finally registered after it challenged the refusals in courts, the officials deleted some articles in the charter paperwork without the consent of the representatives of the association. Thus, this example shows a reluctance to see an active pluralistic civil society, meaning that the government desires to keep political participation at a very low level. Moving on, the second reaction we see from the government is the blocking of the internet, of course, and especially by the especially of the social media. Literally immediately after the democratic choice of Kazakhstan ban, the VK ban, Kazakhstani users began to complain about the interruptions in the work of social networks in the evening when Amlyazov and his supporters were broadcasting live on the web. But the government keeps on denying the fact that they were blocking the internet by saying that these problems with the internet are all merely technical changes and obstacles, of course. Foreign reports classify Kazakhstan as one of the countries where social networks and the communication platforms are often blocked. In the report of Freedom House, a US-based non-governmental organization that measured the level of internet freedom in the world, Kazakhstan took 46th place among 65 countries. Hence, it is appropriate to conclude that Kazakhstan is still in this single-party phase with low level of political participation, but the society is actively showing certain desire to move into an active, pluralistic civil society. Thank you.
There are complex problems in Kazakhstan that are difficult to solve soon. In Kazakhstan, there are also civil problems associated with the lack of understanding of the government authorities. Most of all, the environmental problems in the country are alarming. The tragedy of the Aral Sea, Taldekol, polluted air in Temirtau, Karaganda, as it was written, the early state takes minimum measures and sometimes completely ignores the alarming reports of environmentalists. Civil and human rights are frequently violated. As mentioned earlier, in the example of Feminita, we see that problems with freedom of speech and human rights occur not only because of the government, but because of society. It can be concluded that society is not yet ready for change in the field of free thought. Maybe the Soviet past is affected. Of the positive changes in society, one can single out that most of the population has become more active in civil and social activities. I would especially like to highlight the youth. The young and talented people of Kazakhstan created public association and charitable organization. Digital technologies have also made a considerable contribution to the revitalization of civil work. Now, human rights violation and environmental degradation are covered in social networks, thereby attracting a more passive part of the population to problems. As mentioned before, Kazakhstan has many complex problems, but by observing trends in the growth of civic position, active society can solve these problems.